what's up guys, this is KDCloudy and I was at Pune to check out India's first ever Dolby Cinema at their launch event, and it was just such a special experience in so many levels because the entire Dolby team was there, happy to answer our questions. A lot of industry folks were there, my creative friends were there, and it was just very fun to experience this new format for the first time in India. So I got to watch two movies at this particular screen. We watched F1 during the premiere event, and the day after I watched Jurassic World Rebirth. Both were amazing experience and I have so many thoughts to share. In fact, I already made a reel on Instagram which kind of blew up. But the most interesting thing to notice was most people in the comments had no idea what the speciality of the screen was, and they confused it for any other regular Dolby Atmos screen. So I want to take a moment and explain what Dolby Cinema is and why is it such a big deal. Now, I'm sure you must have seen the Dolby logo in many different screens and theaters across India, but that's just Dolby Atmos, which is their sound technology. Dolby Cinema is a totally different beast. Now, like other cinema formats, Dolby Cinema is a premium large format system, which means the projection, the seats, the audio design and the audio, and even the content is tailor-made to give you the best possible experience. And Dolby Cinema does this by combining two of their key technologies, Dolby Atmos, which we all know and love, and Dolby Vision for the first time. Now, Dolby Vision HDR is something you might have come across if you watch a lot of Netflix on your smart TV. You can see that logo at times. And I did make a Dolby Vision explainer like 5 years ago, but a quick refresher if you don't know what Dolby Vision HDR is. The simplest explanation I have is that every pixel of every frame of a movie can have its own unique brightness value. So something which is dark can go all the way up to 0 nits, full pitch black, and something which is brighter like the sun or a light source can have an even higher nit level. And this is such a demanding task to show varying level of brightness levels in a single screen that you always need a very high-end display or a very high-end projector to pull it off. Now, typical cinema projectors often struggle with showing something which is really bright and showing something which is really dark at the same time. So what you get to see is a bunch of grays or a washed out image. Contrast and brightness is something all cinema projectors inherently struggle with, and that is Dolby Cinema's superpower. Now, combine Dolby Vision's dynamic brightness to Dolby Atmos's beefy sound hardware, which is tuned by the Dolby team, and speakers above you. Combine both of these things and you get Dolby Cinema. Now, Dolby Cinema first opened in like 2014 or 15 in other countries like Amsterdam, UK and the US. But finally, it is coming to India this year with locations spread across Bangalore, Hyderabad, Trichy, 2 places in Kerala, and of course, Pune, which becomes the first ever Dolby Cinema owned and operated by CityPride multiplexes. Now, you probably haven't heard of CityPride because they're not a national chain, but they're a very dominating regional chain operating out of the state of Maharashtra. They're very popular in Pune. They opened one of the first ever multiplexes in the state of Maharashtra. In fact, when I lived with Pune and my parents when I was a small kid in 2007, I watched my first ever Hollywood films at a CityPride multiplex. And it only seems fitting that they are the ones who get to bring this world-class technology to Pune at the Nyati Plaza Mall, which flanks this big, giant Dolby Cinema logo. Now, once you enter the mall and go to the second floor, you immediately see the multiplex entrance and Dolby Cinema logos all over you. It's actually a very nice and premium multiplex with regular screens all around. And at the end of the foyer, there is audio number 6, which is the Dolby Cinema screen, flanking that giant branding, which is already making me giddy as hell. Now, to enter the auditorium, you have to make a way through this matte black tunnel. It's fully dark and 2 sets of doors. And these 2 doors ensure that there is no external sound seeping its way into the auditorium. Like, how cool is that? Now, once you make through that second door, you finally enter the first ever Dolby Cinema of India. And it's so new, it just smells like a new car in here. But jokes apart, it's just so dark in here, which is by design. This audio design is so similar to pictures of Dolby Cinema I've seen abroad. Everything is in matte black, so there is minimal reflectivity back to the screen. The audio also features a curved, steep seating gallery, which gives you a good field of view, and it was pretty nice. And honestly speaking, this is a very well designed audio. It's not flashy, it's very simple, very clean, with the trademark blue lights of Dolby Cinema. Now, coming to the tech specs of this auditorium, the screen is about 55 feet wide and 25 feet high, which is a pretty decent size for a PLF screen. And the auditorium has about 309 seats and is powered by Christie E3LH Dolby Vision dual laser projectors. And this auditorium has a 61 speaker Dolby Atmos setup with a configuration of 29.14.18. which means that there are 29 speakers around you, 14 subwoofers and 18 speakers on the ceiling. But if you notice closely in all the footage I've shown you, you can't see the speakers. And that's because all of the speakers are hidden behind the wall fabric to ensure that there is absolutely no intrusion and there is no reflectivity of light back to the screen, which is something I've seen for the first time and it was just like magical to even think about. So yeah, without any doubt, this particular Audi is powered by the most cutting edge cinema technology which is available out there. And the one thing which I really liked was how open and public Dolby was with regards to their specifications. Now let's talk about the projectors for a second because I think they're really the star of the show. The E3 LS projectors are 6P laser systems. That means there are 2 lasers per color, red, green and blue. So 6 primary colors. So fun fact. It can hit a peak of 32 foot lamberts or 108 nits for 2D with a black level of 0.001 nits. With this, they can hit a contrast ratio of 1,000,000:1 and a color volume of 95% Rec 2020. So yeah, those are definitely some impressive specs. But specs aside, how was it like watching HDR cinema on such a big screen? Because I consume a lot of HDR Dolby Vision content on my iPhone, on my MacBook Pro, and that is really my benchmark for consuming HDR content. I expect deep blacks, sparkly highlights, vibrant color, and an overall bright image if the movie is graded well. And the Dolby Cinema experience was pretty much the exact same. Dolby had this demo showreel which shows off the black levels on the screen and it almost looks like a giant OLED screen. I mean, even through this recorded video, you can tell that this is a big step up compared to other cinemas. Now, talking about my F1 experience, this was my second time watching F1 after IMAX, and the first thing I noticed was the big step up in sound. Like the bass of the car engines and the car crashes was so much more evident in Dolby Cinema. And I'm guilty of not noticing much about sound when I watch movies, but this was so good that it's hard to not notice. And the 4K Dolby Vision DCP, oh my god, it was just so crisp and the projection was next level. Every scene had extra contrast just by default. And more specifically, the opening Daytona sequence, which takes place at night, was the perfect showcase for the deep black night sky with sparkly fireworks and specular highlights from the cars, the headlights, and the shiny surfaces. It was just an HDR showcase. And another thing I noticed was the DCP felt so high bitrate that it even preserved the texture and the grain pattern, something which I just did not see in my previous showing. Next up was Jurassic World Rebirth in Dolby 3D, and I'll be honest, I didn't enjoy this movie as much as I did F1, but it was a pretty fun AV experience overall. Now this movie was shot on 35mm, so it had a mellow Dolby Vision grade. It was uniformly bright throughout, but the HDR grade really shined in the last 30 to 40 minutes, which takes place at night with the bright highlights really popping in front of you from the flares and the street lights, and it was just amazing. The Atmos experience was also very good with subtle overhead flying creatures and birds around you and over you, so that was also cool to hear. The 3D usage in this movie was fine with only some scenes making use of good depth and parallax, but overall the 3D was so clean and ghosting free, and that is thanks to the Dolby 3D glasses. Dolby 3D is a totally different 3D technology. It's called dichroic 3D, and instead of filtering light through your glasses, it's filtering color, which is basically different wavelengths of light. And the result is that when you put on the glasses, there is no loss of light, there is no dimness in the image, which is amazing, and the effect stays rock solid no matter how much you turn your head. And it's a very clean 3D experience. And the glasses themselves are built like a tank, and I got these green ones which are meant for kids and are smaller in size, but damn, they look so cool on me. I also want to take a moment and touch over content, like what sort of movies will be played here. Well, pretty much all major Hollywood blockbusters do get a Dolby Cinema release, but India being the market for regional and localized content, we should expect more and more Indian movies to be released in this format. In fact, Telugu cinema is already ahead of the curve by releasing 3 movies in this format internationally, which includes RRR, Pushpa 2, and Game Changer. So that's pretty cool. And over the course of the next couple of months, we should see more and more Indian titles make its way into this format. Now, one thing to note is that the HDR effect in all the movies I saw on the screen was very balanced. Very bright, like 1000 nit HDR, sometimes can make your eyes squint, and in a dark room, room, it could make your eyes hurt. But with Dolby Cinema, it was not the case at all. And I was told that any Dolby Vision presentation you see at a Dolby Cinema, it's exactly how the filmmakers intended, because they get to grade the same movie in a very similar setup in the grading studio. I think we have covered everything, so what are my overall thoughts? This is easily the best quality, highest fidelity projection system that I've ever laid my eyes on. And I've been to so many laser theaters in India, but this is like the perfect laser based projection system. There's no speckle, there are no ghosting issues, there are no alignment issues, and the HDR content looks wonderful. And the Dolby Cinema audio visual quality simply is the best there is, partly because of the high-end hardware at play and partly because of the content mastered in Dolby Vision with the filmmaker's intent. If anything, I just feel that the people of Pune are very lucky to have so many world-class options to experience their next favorite movie on. I wish that I could just spend an entire day in the cinema and just watch my favorite movies back to back in that Dolby Vision glory. But if I'm being honest for a second, the most important thing out of all is awareness. Because it just feels like I'm in a bubble being excited and hyped about this format while my friends don't know what this is. And that's exactly the reason why I've been so thorough and sounded so bullish throughout this video, because I am bullish about this format and theaters as a whole need that push. In a world where people just think of theaters as a place where you get ripped off by overpriced popcorn, CityPride and Dolby have created something truly magical. And if you're in Pune or any of the other cities where Dolby Cinema is making its arrival, I would highly implore you to support this format and check out your next favorite movie in Dolby Cinema and then make up your mind. That's been it. Thank you so much for watching. And if you still have questions about this format, drop them in the comments below and I will catch you guys in the next one. Cheers.